Malik, you want me to go live? Oh,
Yeah,
we are live. Hey, we're live. As we watch people pour in, good morning, good afternoon, folks.
One second. There's something wrong with LinkedIn. Just give me 1 second, please.
Okay.
Dang it.
should you stop live for some time?
All right, looks like we're live. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. As people gather up and join in, let's give everyone just a second here and we'll kick this thing off in just a second.
Hey, good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
How are
Looking
you
sharp
doing?
today.
Yeah, you too, Andrew.
All right, why don't we kick this thing off? It's 1 minute after. I'm an impatient person. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Andrew Marsh. Good afternoon, good morning. Like I said, I've been in content management and archival space for most of my professional career. Now my 5th year at Platform3Solutions. I work with an amazing team of professionals. We help our customers address their data management and content archival challenges. Among my professionals that I work with is my colleague in crime for today's conversation, Abu Bakr Malik Shahul Hamid, or as I call him, Malik. Thanks for joining today, Malik. I would classify Malik as among the top of the sharpest, hardworking, well-respected, and thoughtful professionals I've ever worked with. So happy to have you. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi everyone. I am Abu Bakr Malik, and to keep it short, let's call me Malik. And I've been having about 13 years of experience with decommissioning, and I currently head the products division of Platform3Solutions. And I have enormous experience in data archival and governance field. And today I'm excited to meet you all and talk about this. Happy to have you with you, Andrew.
Fantastic. So let me start by setting the context for the session today. The context for the session, the title for the session is Archival for Data Governance. So I'll start with archival. Archival, for the purposes of our discussion today, is the growing requirement within IT organizations to formalize a plan for managing business complete data and content within your organizations. Sometimes we call it legacy data, historical data, archived applications. Goes by multiple names, but it's the data that's business complete, data that you're no longer interacting or actively interacting with. Data governance, on the other hand, according to Google, by the way, let me get this quote right. It's the process of managing organizational data by establishing internal policies and standards for how it's gathered, stored, processed, and disposed of. So Archival for Data Governance aligns the capabilities of a purpose-built archive solution for managing and storing your content with a governance needs to gather, store, process, and dispose of it. If you hear me use the terms data and content, you might hear me use them interchangeably. Organizations frequently talk about governance as it relates only to data. In my experience, business requirements don't differentiate between structured and unstructured, or data and content, even though sometimes the technology they use to address them, to address your requirements does. In other words, it's a technology problem, not a business problem. So a quick housekeeping item. Are we having trouble with the stream?
Seems like.
Yeah. Okay, I'll keep going. So I just want to do a quick housekeeping item while we're checking, making sure that we're live. If you have any questions during our session today, please enter them in the chat window. We'll do our best to get to them. So Malik, you and I were talking about a customer use case that we could use to clarify our point here, particularly about the challenges with archival and governance. Can you introduce us to the problem as it relates to a particular customer that that we can use to elaborate on the discussion?
Yeah, sure, Andrew. Like we were discussing about one healthcare technology company which actually grew in size because of mergers and acquisitions. So when you think about mergers and acquisitions, it's actually good for the company. But if you see the IT world, it's not actually good for that department. Whenever a merger happens, there is a group of computers that flow in, most of them really outdated, and that is actually a burden for the IT team to manage. And when large number of such devices are there, it costs each of the company a lot of fortune, a lot of money to be paid out. Okay, they will be like spending money on the servers, they'll be spending money on the storage devices, and they will be also spending money on programs which they don't even use. And that's actually a bigger problem that they need to solve, because sometimes they may be dealing with data that requires regulatory compliance to be kept. So that's basically where we usually step in, and we become the digital decouplers. And during the process, we try to set up a decommissioning factory model where we try to sort, organize, and go through all the data and understand what is important and make it part of the archive. Okay, and though I might be sounding very simple, we are trying to do it for hundreds of applications that are spanning across different services. And usually we'll be dealing with petabytes of information, and organizing them is not an easy job. But as we do this, the end goal is we need to create a centralized repository where people can look up for information, find it when they need it. But that's just one part of the puzzle. If you see, actually, when we are dealing with healthcare specifically, we'll be having patients information, HR information, we'll be having a lot of healthcare data which are really PII driven, and securing that is one of our primary goals during the process. So that's where we try to come up and suggest the companies with frameworks that they can hop for to set up a uh, governance framework that becomes effective on the data, so that they don't end up making themselves unsecure or trying to lose into the tangle of again going back to where it was originally. So when we do this, we secure the data, we organize the data, but at the same time we also slash down the cost by approximately at least 80%. But the real crux of the entire process, not just the money, it's more about finding a smart way to organize and get back the data and make sure that it is securely kept and managed properly according to the ongoing regulations that keep changing each and every day. So that's the power of archival with governance. And probably if you see the market today, there are a lot of changes. Andrew, I think you, when you deal with your sales perspectives, you must have seen most of these happen. Why don't you elaborate about them?
Yeah, sure, Malik. Actually, we're seeing that a lot at the moment, right? Within the customers that I speak to on a daily or weekly basis, we're seeing massive shifts, right? Shifts towards SaaS, shifts towards public cloud, private cloud. Mobility is on we're at the tail end. We've been doing that for a decade or more at this point, but there's still enterprise organizations that are moving to mobile devices. Rapidly growing storage needs, of course. There's a huge push to innovate, certainly with AI, as we're seeing now. And then sort of doubling that down with an enormous compliance, looming compliance regulations like GDPR, CCPA, and there's literally dozens. There's a handful for every industry that you're in. And then if we triangulate that with what I would classify as an ever increasing threat from bad actors, so we started to notice the jump actually a few years ago. We started getting a lot of interactions in Europe as the EU began putting fines. Yeah, putting fines for organizations that fail to meet their GDPR requirements. So since then, actually, now that was a big blip that happened, and it hasn't really fallen off in the EU, but we're actually now starting to see that blip increase in the US as well. I suspect we've got CCPA regulations that aren't being met that again are people are starting to get fined and people are starting to perk up and pay attention to it. So we're going to see those spread across the country as I personally live in Colorado. We just July 1st, we just announced our regulations went into practice. So I think the question really is, what should you be looking for when considering a solution to support your data governance? Malik, it's not really a one size fits all approach, correct?
No, definitely not. So I went with the same assumption in my previous experience, but then as I grew up, I got to understand like it's not so simple as that. But before jumping into that, probably we need to introduce the terminology of what governance is and what we can achieve through it. So I'm just going to pop up my screen here. So data governance is basically something like a framework that provides the organization a necessary structure so that you can organize and manage the data that you have. And when you consider this, it's very simple in its terminology, but in the process wise it's a little complicated, and you need to have proactive approaches being carried forward now to make sure that data governance comes into effect in every step of your data. So to put it in very simple, there are two parts to it. One is it involves understanding your data, meaning find out where your assets are, what, who can access it, who owns it, and then after trying to understand a set of policies that you want your data to be governed under, declare them out and keep it all ready. And then once you have the policies ready, try to enforce so that your policies can come into effect. And when they all come, you establish a data standard that is followed throughout your organization. And while we do this, we can ensure that you have a data that is more accurate. You can make sure that it is always accessible by the specific set of people who have authorization to do it, and you can make sure your data is consistent, and most importantly, you can achieve security. So with that, but coming back to your original question, like what is data governance, but does it fit one size fits all model? It's definitely not, because there are what data governance usually does is it's a group of different pillars or different types that define or capture different aspects of how you manage your data. So there are n number of approaches you can do it, but I'm going to probably stick on to a specific set of four major pillars, which are data catalog, data quality, privacy, and data lineage. Okay. So to start off with, what is data catalog? Data catalog is simply a collection or a list of all the data assets that you have, irrespective of where they exist. Data assets could be any file or any data that can be residing in your database. It could be anything that exists in your data lake, or probably in any of the cloud storages that you have on a file system. You need to make sure that you have a list of where your data assets are, and that's predominantly the discovery part of where your data exists. And the second step that follows data catalog is going to be updating your metadata to ensure that you have captured all the necessary information about the data, like descriptions, who owns it, what is the access privileges, and stuff like that. And predominantly all of this is going to be collected in the metadata, and once you achieve this, data
Yeah,
catalogs comes your search engine to find the data, just like googling over the internet.
right.
uh,
So go ahead.
No, I was just pointing you to talk about quality.
Yeah, so yeah, good point. So next pillar really is data quality, right? As you would expect, the data quality ensures your data is accurate, complete, consistent, reliable, and relevant. There's a handful of others, but those are the big ones. High quality data is critical for effective decision making. It's important for effective business operations and compliance with regulatory standards. In fact, any one of those items is not met, you're going to see that you lose trust of the very solution. Your users will lose trust of the very solution you're using to protect that data. So, you agree with that, Malik?
Yes, I do. So let me just give an example here. Like, we are in living in the age of AI, and when you think about the quality of the data, your AI behaves on the data set that it's trained on. So the moment you have a good quality of data over which your data is getting trained, you can always make sure that your AI is unbiased. The results of the AI are unbiased. And the key thing is having good quality of data always ensures the reports that you get, or probably any kind of analytics that you do over it, is more reliable compared to when you don't have that trust. So uh, when we talked about cataloging, right, we talked about having an ownership being mentioned. So that owner is supposed to be primarily responsible for ensuring that this data quality is always kept. And if you think about it, right, when we have a metadata in place, we need to also capture the metadata along with the data. So when doing
Yep.
that process, if you're able to establish what my data explains, what is the quality of the data with which it has to be accessed, and if you can also figure out and set up some level of constraints that ensures that the data that is being resided on your storage devices stick to that quality, you'll ensure that it's more refined and more reliable to use going further.
Right. Let's talk about privacy and classification. So data privacy and classification, we indicated this a few minutes ago. It's not defined by a one size fits all solution, right? Different industries will have different requirements for both privacy and classification. In a nutshell, where this pillar really ensures that your data and content is available to the people who need it and not available to the people who don't. It also ensures that whatever classifications you need for your line of business, PII, HIPAA, FERC, GDPR, CCPA, SOX, Dodd-Frank, et cetera, or any number of those acronyms, right? Make sure that it's available to those regulatory bodies as well as the people who need it, and not for those who don't. So
And
go
if
ahead.
you look closely at all these privacy regulations that are put in place, what we observe is they try to establish something like even though you hold the data asset, you are primarily just a custodian and not the owner of the data. The persons whose information resides is actually the owner, so that he gets to define how the data must be treated, what must be held, and how it's supposed to be accessed. So that's the entire crux of all these regulations put in place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So probably moving on to data lineage. Okay, data lineage is an interesting topic. Like every time I try to understand it, because of the nature of this complexity, it helps. Different people have different views. So for me, to put it in a simple nutshell, I would call it like it's like following the breadcrumbs of your data journey. So okay, again, let me give you an analogy to relate this with, so that you can understand this
Yeah.
better.
I
Okay, so
like your
imagine.
analogy, by the way. This is a good one. This is very helpful for me.
Okay, so imagine that you're watching a baseball game, and someone scores a um, three-run homer, and the entire crowd cheers, right?
Yep.
So during that particular point, you might be like wondering about how the batsman swing this baseball bat, or maybe the pitcher is despair. But have you ever wondered about how the ball travel to hit beyond the boundary? So if you do the same thing for the data, that's data lineage. When the pitcher tried to throw the ball, that's the ball coming from the hands of the pitcher. That's supposed to be the data coming from the data source. So this could be either from a database, or it could either be information that's coming from the sensor. And when the ball zips through the air, it would have been moved a little or transformed a little, just because of the slight outstretch that the pitcher might have made, causing it to be related to the transformations that the data can undergo. This could be the aggregation, or any type of filtering options, or maybe joining of information that you do during the process. And finally, when the ball goes beyond the wall and the entire crowd cheers, that's the final outcome of the product, which could be related to the data result or the data report that you generate for your customer profile, or maybe your sales related activities. So following that baseball's
Yeah.
journey for the data, that's basically data lineage. And data lineage simply can be related to a replay camera that helps you understand how your data started, where it originated, what it transformed, and what impacts it caused during the transformation process. And tracking that all down gives you better understanding to analyze where and how things can get impacted in your decision making process. So with that properly, I would like to ask you one small question. Like, we talked about the entire data governance,
Mm-hmm.
collecting the ownership information, measuring the quality of the data, ensuring the private usage, and also the lineage. But what do you think is the best place to effectively capture this and maintain?
You
In this,
talking about metadata?
yes. So metadata is probably the most effective place to get capture all this information. And once we have it all in one place, you can probably set up or any type of workflows to go around it.
So I think metadata is important. I'm not sure that we have time for it for today's session, Malik. We scheduled 30 minutes. So let's do this. Let's reserve metadata for the tail end of our conversation. If time permits, we'll revisit it. If not, why not schedule a follow-up session? So let's move on. Can you introduce us to Archival as a concept, Malik?
Okay, so that's my predominant field. So let me take a
Yeah.
swing. So archival for me is predominantly any type is a process that is defined to carry any business closed or operationally closed data or any type of data that is unmodifiable to a different storage from where it can be managed for two specific purposes. One is preservation of history, and the second one is to maintain regulatory compliance. So think about an invoice data. Like if the invoice has got completed, it basically becomes read only, and you only might be using it for reporting purposes. So as far as this data exists in the original system, it simply is going to add on to your results getting updated, or it's only going to be on one side of 1 month's report. But once you move that data, the closed information, to an archive system, you basically try to eliminate any loss of security or any kind of breach that can exist, and making sure that your active systems are operating functionally. They are able to keep up with the operational load. They are able to operate with less operational load, whereas you will be able to establish the same governance in the archive region, ensuring your data is managed in the proper way it is supposed to.
Yeah, and so what we've discovered, though, right, is the enormous wave of regulatory compliance sweeping the IT landscape. And it's forcing our customers into making a decision. Data that should be considered an asset, even your legacy data, can quickly turn into a liability if your technology is not able to keep up with your regulatory needs.
Yeah, that's really true. But think about a system where you have your data available and you have a layer that keeps actively governing on your data. If you are able to like enforce such a system, then probably your
Yeah.
data is going to be held, making sure that your quality, your privacy, and anything related to managing your data is all subsequently taken care. And that's the essence of how a system should be governed. And archival, if you do it, that's a tool that people are looking for.
Right. That actually starts right with by laying the foundations of governance, and as we've already discussed, using techniques like classification, metadata management, privacy, and accessibility. They actively contribute to upkeep with maintaining compliance, security, and risk mitigation. Right. So, and we're seeing this, right, Malik, in our opportunities. You're seeing it from me calling you up, asking for capabilities and features.
Yeah, Andrew, like we are definitely seeing a shift of people constant looking for archival services with this active kind of governance in place. With the new age of AI, people are looking for easy ways to find out how to manage their privacy, classify the data, and they're indeed interested in migrating the risk. So they are looking for any kind of evaluator service that probably can make them assess the data assets and find out where the faults are, and probably highlight and notify them well ahead of any kind of issue. So any tool that is capable of doing all this, either manually or AI driven, or probably by setting up governance rules and some certain things, they definitely have a hedge in this new world. So that actually opens up an approach which I have in my mind, then that is, if we have something like an open metadata.
Yeah.
So open metadata is something like you provide information about what you know right now, and then make your entire solution work with that information, but probably add in more information as and when you get it, to enrich the content of providing ownership or providing accessibility, privacy, and stuff like that. So think about the solution which operates on metadata along with certain things like simplified workflows to help you manage your data. So that's the point when archival will be fully seen as a tool for data governance, enterprise data governance, basically.
Right.
So Andrew, like with when I talk about all these solutions and other things, right? Some question probably goes in my mind, like, what do you think is actually the reason why governance is being seen as a challenge, specifically in
Well,
the archive?
I mean, I thought we were talking about baseball. That's what I would call a softball. The fact is, right, it's lack of a proactive approach. It's quite simple. Most people, by the time they speak to us, most of our conversations are, we've already had an issue and we need to figure out how to address it. And then we have to figure out what a plan is to move forward. So taking a reactive approach, really, right, it takes non-compliance, security breaches, higher costs, poor data quality. It disrupts operations. I recently read, actually, a Gartner document where they predicted 80% of DNA governance initiatives will fail by 2027 due to lack of
Yeah,
a real or manufactured
yeah, I
crisis.
read that too. I read
So
that.
this is especially relevant for archive and legacy applications. If you think about it, right, once you've moved your data out of that legacy application into your production application, the stuff just sits there. There's an IT person or team that's custodians of that content and the infrastructure associated with it. But really, the lack of ownership goes away right away. Loss of access controls. People that used to have access get cut off because they don't want them accessing the old system. And in general, people lose touch with the data. So, conversely, proactive approach to managing this data with policies, with clear regulations, audits, employee training, and using the appropriate technology investment helps prevent those issues, and it really supports better business outcomes. And as we discussed earlier, saves you money in the long run.
Yeah.
So
So
I
I'm
know we've only got a couple of minutes left. Um, Why don't we wrap it up? I don't think we have time for that, the metadata sidebar that we tabled, Malik. So again, let me open it one more time for Q&A. If you got comments, please don't hesitate to ask them.
okay. I see a question from Vignesh Alagaraj, who has asked about how we deal
Hmm,
with data integrity in the data store solution. Yeah, so data integrity is the essence of any archival solution. You need to make sure that you have
yeah,
the data as is from the original system and ensure that you capture the data accurately according to the data type, data format, and stuff like that. So we have different methodologies to do it and also to consistently check it. The easiest way is to do a checksum, character count, or probably data comparison operation to ensure
yep.
once you have it in the archive system, you do a base-to-base comparison between the original and the source to ensure that the data integrity is there. But that's a manual process, and I think you might probably looking for automated one, and our solutions do have it. Um, I think I'll have to give the secret of all our solution out in this call if I have to talk in detail about.
Right. Thank you for that question, Vignesh. So if you've been paying attention so far, it seems the need for archival with data governance becomes clear. Hopefully that's become clear as a result of the last 28 minutes. The fact that we have a live audience right now indicates to me that some people have either decided or wrestling with or trying to make a decision with how to address this topic. And really what it boils down to is, we interact with customers at all stages in the process, whether you're trying to get a grip on where to start, grappling with your own technology debt or your growing technology debt, experiencing what I call a failure to launch, and that is, have tried to deploy some sort of database solution but haven't quite figured out or hasn't worked the way you want it. You treat every application, legacy application, like a snowflake, for example. Or God forbid, you're dealing with regulators or compliance officers, or you've had suffered from a fine. My advice is there's no time like the present to start the conversation. Malik, you want to summarize for a minute or so?
Yeah, so in the growing world of regulatory changes happening each and every day, make sure that we have a proactive approach to governance. We deal our data and make sure that it's always captured from the start with all the necessary cataloging techniques. So you don't end up having to go through too much trouble, and that's what our solution also does.
Right. Excellent. So managing to wrap this thing up right on time, it looks like. Folks who attended, thank you. I hope this was a valuable use of your time. Please don't hesitate to comment if you want to make suggestions about where to go next. I feel like we're going to start this as a regular cadence. If there's any questions we didn't get to, we'll do our best to reach out and follow up with you folks. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can find me and Malik and the entire Platform 3 team on LinkedIn. And we're looking forward to the next step. Thanks, folks. Have a great day.
Thank you all.